So for the first step to draw lips, you need to draw a line like this, which is slightly tilted, or it's slightly tilted, and then you can go ahead and draw the upper part. Now this angel's arc or something, however it's called, there are many shapes to it. There's a V, there's a wide U shape, there's any shape, just depending on the person. Now, if you really want to, it is very recommended to look at a reference photo while drawing lips. It's just better if you're a beginner. Even for me, well, I'm not very experienced, but it is definitely easier, and it helps to look at a reference photo while drawing lips. So you see these little notches, these little lines which are going up. These are the areas where will be the darkest. So once I finish everything else, once I finish the part on the lower lips, I can then fill them out with the darkest dark I can find. Now it's very important on while drawing the lips that the upper part will almost be darker, always be darker than the lower part, but also depending on the lighting. But in most scenarios, the bottom part will be lighter than the top part. Okay, so now that I have the darkest parts like outlined, I'm just gonna use the side of a 2B pencil and very lightly, but with a constant amount of pressure applied on the pen. I'm just going to go over the top part and also some parts of these cracks. In most lips, these cracks won't be as significant, but for the sake of this video, I chose some lips that were particularly dried, so there will be more cracks and it will be more visible. So now on the sides of the lips, you'll see that there's usually an indent, which will create more shadow. So I'm just gonna add that real quick, and also because the light source is coming from the top left, the shadows will be more on the right side. While shading while shading the top part, it is very, very important to know which part you're drawing and how much pressure you're applying on the pen. Now, one very useful technique to make sure that the shading is very is consistent is to use a technique called hatching or cross hatching. Now with a 6B pencil, or preferably an 8B pencil, I'm going to go through these cracks and these like dry cracks, you can call them like lip droughts, I might call them, and I'm just going to make sure that they are the darkest part of the lips. For this top bit, I am again looking at the reference photo. I'm looking carefully at where the darkest parts might be and making sure that the contrast between the darkest parts isn't going to be intertwined with the main part of the upper lips, or else the lips will look blunt. Everything will look the same with the same tone, and the whole purpose of drawing the lips will be defeated. So I'm just trying to be very careful with where I'm adding the dark bits and not trying to affect the surroundings or the surrounding areas. Now I'm just going to shade the right part a bit more because the lighting or the light source is from the left side. So I'm just going to make sure that the right part is more shaded than the left part. with these lips, like these cracks, on one side it could be very dark, and on the other side it can be very light. So you might be making a few mistakes on the way, but it's totally fine. You can rub out some parts of the darker parts, erase it and make it look like a light reflection, because these cracks are kind of like dense. So one side will have no light at all, and the other part will receive a lot of light. So now moving on to the lower part, I'm just gonna first draw in the darker parts, the darkest parts you can say. And it's okay if you leave some of it uh, blank or not filled in, because just now I talked about the shadows and how it is like a dent. So one part will be dark and one part will be light. So right next to some of the dark parts, you might want to leave it completely white, just to make sure that the lighting can be consistent throughout. You can really think of drawing lips like shading a sphere, because there's going to be areas where there's going to be a lot of light, and areas where there isn't going to be a lot of light. At this point of the artwork, you can already say that it is finished, but for me, I feel like there are more things to add. Looking back at the reference photo, the part underneath the lips is gonna be very dark as well as the middle of both lips, of both upper and lower lips. So I'm just gonna, for the finishing touches, I'm just gonna add more shade to the bottom part, like right now, to make sure that the lighting is even throughout, and it makes sense.